So this part, I think, I just want to sort of name or the intention here. And so there's the intention that we can understand ourselves better. And the first exercise that we'll do is actually going to be about that, just giving us an opportunity to be in the field, to sort of experience the sensing that we do in constellation work, representation, and just what it feels like to receive information through our perception, our bodies, and our felt sense, and etc. So we're going to do a little bit of work focusing first on just understanding ourselves better. And the intention is to be able then to step into understanding and developing a personal connection with our ancestors and their world as they saw it, the best that we can. So it's just the beginning. We begin, and then, we sort of knock at the door and see what happens. And then, as always, my intention in all of my work is that we then experience what's possible through our expanded knowing. And I use that term to refer to our capacity to use our intuition, to use our sensing to receive information. And in constellation work, there's a specific term called representative perception, meaning I can represent your mother or your grandmother or your ancestor, and I can feel in my body how that ancestor in the context of whatever the question is that you're looking at. So it's very specific. I'm not feeling everything about everybody at all times. I'm feeling something very specific. And all of my work, all of my intention is to really introduce people that yes, we do this for family systems and family constellations, but we can do this really for any information. We have access to everything if we want. And it's very simple. It's very simple, and you need practice. But you only need practice because you need to teach yourself to trust yourself. You don't need practice because you can't do it. You need practice because you have to teach yourself to trust yourself. So if a person says, Alison, you're so good at this, it's only because I've learned to trust what comes through me. That's all. Information is always coming through you, so we're just going to practice trusting ourselves when the information comes. So that's my intention. That's what I'm going to offer as a facilitator. And then the exchange is simple. One is I'm going to send you a little follow-up survey and reflection. So I ask that you complete that. The other is just to bring yourself, to give the gift of your presence, whatever insights come, whatever authenticity, whatever you want to share or not share. You don't have to share anything or everything, but just bringing yourself here is authentically is the gift that you bring and that you also receive. So for everything that is given, the other side of the reciprocity is that you receive. So in whatever ways you can, that you can be open and receive. And then if you're not, that's okay too. Sometimes we can't receive all the things for whatever reason. So we treat ourselves gently. But we acknowledge this flow of giving and taking. So I'm actually going to have us move from here now into the first exercise. And I have a map. I'm going to show the map, and I'm a little bit reluctant because I don't want the map to become overwhelming, but oops, is this the one? Yeah. Oh, get rid of that. There we go. Okay. So I want you to imagine that there's a triangle and you are at the center. And you are shaped by these things. That's natural. So we are shaped by the people we come from. So in this case, we can be specific and say our parents. And of course, there's more than just our parents, but for now, we're just going to talk about parents. There's the place where we were born. So this may be different from the place where our parents are from and feel connected to, all those things. But for now, I want to actually focus on the place where your body came into this planet. Okay, so that's place. And then there's this context of culture and society and the time that we're born in. So those are the three sort of elements that are shaping who we are in this moment, or 3 of the elements. And then I also drew a kind of yellow, there's like a larger yellow circle around that. And I call that core essence. I've been doing a lot of work around essence. Joanne, I don't know if you've been doing any work about that, but just there's some facilitators on the Northwest who are doing some work around this that I really appreciate. So anyways, we're gonna work with these 3 spaces of our parents, the place where we were born, and this time. We're gonna feel those 3 spaces. And then after we feel those spaces, at some point I'm also gonna have a step into just feeling what is our core essence beyond those 3 things that are shaping us. What does that feel like in our bodies? Okay. So what you can do, I'm gonna stand up, and I recommend that you can try it this way. Some people will do it more of a guided inner meditation, but for me, I like to stand up and move. So I'm gonna invite you in a minute we'll stand up, and you can imagine this picture sort of on the floor in front of you. And we'll start in the center, and then we'll move to parents and feel that's just feeling what it feels like in our body when we stand with our parents, and feeling what it feels like when we stand with the place where we were born, and then this time period where we were born, okay? Any questions about the exercise so far? Okay, Yvonne, how about you? You ready to try? Okay, good. So I'm gonna ring the bell just to initiate the space. And so go ahead and have us stand up. And bring yourself into that center point. And then when you're ready, step first into the field of the parent. So give yourself some time. You don't have to rush this at all. So there's no way to do this wrong. We're just sensing with our bodies and trusting whatever we feel. And then once you feel like you've gotten enough information from that space, which is your parent space, you can either step back into the middle, back into yourself, or you can step directly into the place of place, the land, the location where you were born, the place, the earth where you were born. And then again, when you're ready, you can step out of that space at your own pace. And then just step into this society that we are in. What does it feel like to be in our society? I'm going to invite you, if you like, to step back through the points. So step back through from society back to place, from place back to parents, and then from parents back to self, just to see again how it feels in the body. And then when you're done, when you come back to self, we'll meet again on the screen. So I'd love to hear your report if you want to share.
So initially it was the parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the parents, my body moved into a corner. So I was really focused on the corner of the room that I was. And there's this tree that I have that it reminds me a lot of La hoja de Yagrumo.
What's that?
La hoja de Yagrumo.
Uh-huh. I don't know what that is.
So it's an endemic tree of Puerto Rico.
Uh-huh.
So Tainos, or like our ancestors, and we still use it, depending on how it looks, it's gonna be sunny or it's gonna rain.
Yeah.
So it just reminded me of that. When I went into my birthplace, I was really curious. I have a closet and it was cracked. So I was really curious to see what was inside. It was almost like a secret. Like I want to open to see what's in. And I was really aware of of the spider webs in the corners with also makes me realize I need to clean. But it was more about the webs, just like cleaning out those webs.
Uh-huh. Mm.
I was also really cold when I was standing in my parents.
You're
It
cold.
felt really cold, yes. And when I went into society, I got pain in my knees. And it was like my initial reaction with my hands was just like to kind of like have them together. I don't know if like in which form, but just like together. I was a little bit uneasy, but at the same time, just uneasy and not uneasy, just kind of looking outside and see what's going on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the part where I'm like, oh, like I don't know if I'm doing it right.
Yeah.
But for me, initially, being like when I was with my parents, and they've passed on a few years now.
Oh.
So initially, there's like that yearning when I start really thinking about them. And then, of course, my mind just goes elsewhere. And so I was just thinking, I wish I knew how to listen, just how to hear. When I moved to birthplace, kind of more of the same, like I remembered, Puerto Rico and my memories. I was born in Ponce, but I lived in Guayanilla. They're very close. Ponce is very big and Guayanilla is very small. But so I remembered, envisioned myself there. When I came to current like society, similar to Joanny, I noticed my hands were like this. So I clenched. And like knowing how I feel in society now versus how I felt in my society or like my culture, my place in New Haven, Connecticut a few years ago is different. But then when you had
just in a couple of years, it's different.
Yeah. I had like a different view of the world a few years ago, like a more optimistic view. And the last few years, it's kind of like, phew, and having to fight battles I didn't think I would have to fight. But then when we like did it backwards, it was like at the end it was who I am, because I live here. I know this culture, but I have a different culture that I'm from. And my parents were the ones who gave me that to make me. I don't know if that was kind of like what I just went through.
And you did it perfectly, because it's that's really where right now the perfection is in the intention and in the sensing, and that's everything. That's everything. That was very interesting for me. So I received when I stepped into my parents. So every field felt just kind of distressed. There wasn't like ease in any of the ones. My parents felt I had a lot of like kind of tightness and like as if the top of my body was kind of tight. My head was down. I think my eyes were closed the whole time also. So this sense of tightness and discomfort in my body when I was standing with them. In the place, that is the place where I did feel good. So I was spinning, I found myself turning, and I had to check which direction, because I was also turning in society, and then I checked and I realized we were turning in opposite directions. So New York City was turning to the left. And at first it was a little bit like I wondered, like, oh, is this going to get uncomfortable? But then I realized how I kind of enjoyed it. So there was that part of me, which is something I certainly recognize, that I do enjoy New York City, and I enjoy the feeling of it. And So there's I took some pleasure in that busyness of the city. And then I came into society. I started turning to the right and more slowly. And it felt like sometimes I would swing in a certain direction and I would feel like judgment in the sense of like trying to figure where do the things go? Who do you belong with? Which side are you on? Like that kind of sense. I noticed a feeling almost like my head and my body were disconnected. Like at first it was mostly in my head. And then I noticed some pressure in my body, but they felt like separate things. And then by the time I came back around and came back to myself, I just appreciated, just kind of like what you said, Yvonne, that there's like, oh, this made me, this is what I'm made out of. Okay, I'm going to have us step back in. We'll start in the self place. And I'm going to have you step back a bit, or you can actually figure out where to stand. I don't know if you're actually going to go back, or you can go to the side, you can go wherever you want, but sort of step out of that first circle and just step into essence. What is your core essence that's pulsing through your body? I'll tell you this thing. I often tell people this because I think it's actually pretty remarkable. You have 70 trillion cells in your body. Like that's an incomprehensible number. And half of them are not even human cells. This is the crazy thing. So maybe you know this, but a lot of it is in your gut. Is like the bacteria, like all the things that your body needs to digest food and etc. So half of you is human DNA, half of you is non-human DNA, like bacteria and everything. And those things are all communicating, and they are making you walk around on this planet right now and breathe and etc. and interact with the world. Well, how many, so I was wondering, how does that compare to the number of stars in the sky? Turns out we only see, I was shocked, we see fewer than 7,000 stars. Altogether, it's fewer than 10,000, even when you take in the dim stars. We only see 10,000 stars in the sky at the best possible viewing, which is not very many. And then if you take in all the stars in the Milky Way galaxy, they estimate that there's 400 billion stars, still far fewer than a trillion, by the way. You have 70 trillion. So when you do the calculation, it turns out you are made out of something like 175 Milky Way galaxies worth of cells. So you are walking around 175 Milky Way galaxies that are held together by some amazing mystery. That's you. That's your core essence. So that's what we're going to tap into. What is this field that holds together this incomprehensible number of this galaxies, this universe? So let's try that. Start with the self and then go out to essence. Okay? What did you find?
Mm. For me, when I was in myself, I don't know if it was a sensation of floating, but it was more like kind of like a pendulum moving from side to side. And then and very peaceful. And when I went to the core essence, is there like thunder going on?
There is, yeah.
So I was like really aware of that thundering. And almost like what came to mind was I'm everything. I'm rain, I'm light, I'm sun. And the more I thought of that, I got like an itchiness in my left ear, which is like, what do you want to say? I'm trying to hear. So yes, I am.
Yeah.
So for me, I guess I'm more in my head. Like I'm not so much in tune with like what my body's feeling. But definitely thinking about who I am, and then thinking about you don't really know exactly what essence, like what that means, versus like who I am. But I really just went through this process of thinking, well, like I think I know who I am at this point in my life. But again, I've changed a lot, and trying to go to like something that has been constant and that I do try to constantly use and be, and I guess I'm really I think I tend to be wordy, but I do try to do a lot of the concept of empathy and really understanding and feeling others. So like as I was trying to figure out my essence, the way I understood it, which is I don't know if I like went woof, but to me essence is kind of like who I am, like always, like who's like deep down inside of me, who am I, who I try to be. And I don't know if I'm fully there yet, but I do try to be always empathetic and always be understanding of others and situations that I walk into and that I don't know of, and people. And so I try. That was where I went.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting because I feel like if it was just the first time doing this, I don't know what I would get. You know, because I feel like I'd probably also be like, I don't know what you're really asking, but here's my thoughts about it. I've done it a few times, so I could have a different experience because it changes each time. But this time I felt, so when I started with myself, it was interesting. I did feel, it was nice because I felt like my sense of self changed in awareness of an essence, like as if I thought, wow, I'm myself and I have an essence. Like that's also in me. So there was something, myself felt better than it did the first time, just because I was like, oh, I'm in contact with my essence. Like it's somewhere here. I get to go meet it. So that was nice to feel myself a bit more grounded somehow, because I knew I had an essence. And then when I went into essence, I did feel like I was in the universe. You know, I just spoke about Milky Way galaxies, and there was a way in which I had the sense of like, wow, that's a lot of stars that are being held together. And it was interesting to imagine that every little movement was moving so many stars, like an entire, I don't know, what would this part of my body is one Milky Way galaxy? You know, I don't know, but that was so interesting how much I was affecting with just little movements. So, and I also felt more aware in my body than I feel like I've noticed before, or at least there was an awareness. There was some kind of awareness, as if I really could see that I was all these galaxies and that they were all connected, and I could actually feel them all. I was breathing more deeply and noticing the way the breath could move the stars. Okay, I want to say something. I want to talk about this because I mentioned essence before, and I feel like I'll just mention this. Let's see, should I say it? Is it meaningful to say right now? It's really only that I want to reassure you. I mean, Yvonne, Joanna has had some experience, so I feel less concerned to reassure her, but I want to reassure you, you really can't do this wrong. And this is just the beginning. And right now we're representing, like we're feeling in our own fields. And sometimes it's actually harder to separate because we're ourselves, feeling ourselves and parts of ourselves. At some point we're going to represent, we're going to represent something. We're going to choose to represent something. And we're going to sort of clearly decide, this isn't just specifically a part of me, this is something else. And sometimes it can be clear, sometimes not. But I'm just naming that there's lots of different ways to have this experience. And really, you can't do it wrong, even if you feel like you're thinking. Okay. Any comments or questions so far? Okay. So I want to do the same movement. So the same structure that we just did with the triangle and the different parts. But this time I want us to intentionally make contact with an ancestor, one of our own ancestors. I sometimes call this a time travel constellation because we're going to intentionally move into a different point in time. And so I'm thinking to even have a step back like 1,000 years. So this is a time when it's fully before even, it's pre-Columbian time. So when our ancestors were fully inside of our thriving community and culture and society. So we'll step in the center point, choosing intentionally to connect with one of our own ancestors from 1,000 years ago. And we'll move through the same points. We will feel their parents. We can call them parents or people to see how it shows up. We'll feel the land, the earth, the ocean. There's lots of things in their society that they're probably, who knows how they're reviewing. We'll see it from the inside. And then we'll feel society, the shape of their mind. How does their mind, what does it feel like to be inside the mind of our ancestor? Okay. So we'll do those first. And take your time with this. You're approaching your ancestor for the first time, perhaps. So, make a little introduction before you can sort of ask for permission before you step into them, all those things. Just sort of see what it's like for you rather than just diving in, just sort of test out when it's ready for you to step into them. Welcome back. I feel that experience has quieted my mind. If my mind feels very quiet right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I welcome whatever you want to share.
My initial movement was to stand in front of the mirror. And there was like this feeling to open my arms, just like as to receive. But it was more like if I was like picking up water, como una cuenca. And just by doing that, I feel like I bowed my head a little bit because I felt like I was a little bit kind of too high. And I started feeling a lot of ease after that. And I moved and my body went to the floor, like squatting. It felt discomfortable to be squatting. And that was it. I was just there. Not a lot came after that. It was just, I realized, I looked at my feet and realized like, wow, you've walked so long and so far. And just, yeah, I was just being there. It kind of like looked a lot like, it was like a lot of dirt, a lot of, definitely not buildings and concrete. So it was very raw. It felt raw. Yeah.
Thank you.
So for me, it was that initial, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to start. I don't know. And then I remembered you were saying how don't come from like you're going to colonize point of view, like really. So how you were said, Johnny, I bowed my head and I was like, and I'm kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but it kind of like thinking, I don't want to say praying because I wasn't praying, but it was just kind of like this internal communication of just, I'm respectful and I'm your daughter and I want to connect. And then how you said, I got the idea of squatting. When I moved a little bit but I'm like, no, because I'm kind of heavy right now. So if I squat, it's going to be really uncomfortable. So I didn't, but I definitely had that went through me. So when you said that, I was like, wow. And then at one point, as I was like really, like I was just really seeing like a river and a lot of greenery and dirt, like you said. And then one of my kids jumped upstairs. And so my immediate thing was,